Hello, dear friend. Thank you for hanging out with a couple of multiples today. We are your hosts, Drew
and Garden System. We are a married couple that both have Dissociative Identity Disorder, or DID.
The reality of living with multiplicity is nothing like what you might see in the movies or on soap operas. This mental health condition often goes unnoticed, even by mental health professionals. Did you know that someone with DID spends an average of 6 to 12 years in the mental health system before receiving a correct diagnosis? This is because there is still a prevailing belief, even among clinicians, that DID is rare. The truth is that there are around 120 million people all over the world that meet the criteria according to the DSM-5.
We are glad that you are here to learn all about dissociative identity disorder. Whether you are someone living with multiplicity, a supporter, or a mental health professional, you are making a difference by choosing to listen to this podcast today. You can help dispel myths about DID and help spread awareness by sharing this podcast with a friend or loved one.
Please visit acoupleofmultiples.com and sign up for our mailing list to learn all about our private paid community called Hearts Multiplied on the Circle platform. If you're enjoying this podcast, please consider giving us a 5-star review. And for our Apple listeners, we would really appreciate you leaving us a written review.
Together, we can make a difference by taking the disorder out of dissociative identities. We are honored to have a Gold Plus sponsor for Season 2.
The Institute for Creative Mindfulness is one of the largest EMDR therapy training programs in North America, founded and directed by Dr. Jamie Pless-Marich, author of Dissociation Made Simple. Dr. Jamie is the only EMDR therapy trainer who is out as a plural, and since 2015, she's offered the full EMDR therapy basic training in a way that honors lived experience and destigmatizes dissociation in clinical work.
We have never felt more accepted and validated as a multiple than when we were able to show up authentically as Garden System for our basic EMDR training. Having lived experience is valued and respected in these training courses.
Go to www.instituteforcreativemindfulness.com for a full list of upcoming trainings, both online and in person, offered by Dr. Jamie and her selected network of EMDR trainers.
Are you interested in becoming a sponsor? Please send an email to admin@acoupleofmultiples.com to request more information.
Welcome, dear friends. We are your hosts, Drew
and Garden System,
a couple of multiples.
The reality of dissociative identity disorder.
Today, we are excited to have Ocean to discuss all things IFS and how to apply it with those living with dissociative identities.
Ocean is a highly educated and certified internal family systems licensed therapist, having completed all 3 levels of IFS training. With over 30 years of experience in the mental health field, she began her career in a psychiatric trauma and inpatient unit. Ocean specializes in working with individuals who have complex post-traumatic stress disorder, CPTSD, and dissociative disorders and eating disorders.
As a program assistant in IFS Level One training, she has presented on using IFS with individuals with dissociative disorders during breakout sessions. Her diverse academic background includes degrees in educational leadership and clinical teaching and special education, which, combined with her compassion, enable her to share valuable experience and knowledge with other therapists in the field of treating dissociative identity disorder, DID, clients using the IFS model. Ocean firmly believes in the IFS principle that all parts are welcome.
Her integrative approach blends mind-body techniques and meditation with IFS, inspiring her journey to become a yoga teacher. She strives to foster a deeper connection with parts work while incorporating holistic practices within IFS. Currently, she is furthering her studies in Ayurveda.
In her spare time, Ocean enjoys connecting with nature, swimming, living the van life, spending quality time with her human and furry family members, and meditating by the ocean.
We are so excited to have you on our podcast today.
Thank you for having me. I feel very humbled to be here. I love you guys so much and learn so much from your podcast.
Oh, thank you.
Aw, you're the best. So we have plenty of questions for you. First, would you please tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to work with dissociative parts?
Sure. And you can pause anytime because I have quite many stories. So if you need ask me in the middle of this, just say, okay, please explain this.
Awesome.
Okay.
We love stories.
Yeah, stories are great.
Okay, so when I was a young kid, I always knew I was going to become a therapist. I spent countless hours in the self-help section of the bookstore. I don't know if you remember it. It was Walden Books. It was at the mall back in the olden days.
I remember.
You remember that?
Yes.
And my friends were off doing other things, and I was immersed in books about self-help, knowing deep down that I wanted to be a therapist and something was not so quite right about me. As I began my career as a therapist, I was also navigating my own journey through various personal challenges, primarily anorexia, which was my main diagnosis, quote unquote. In 1990, I found myself in a psychiatric hospital where I had previously worked as a nurse's assistant. During this time, they attempted to diagnose me with, what do you think? Multiple personality disorder, now known as DID. Like many of us, I was initially skeptical and thought to myself, I'm not Sybil, that's crazy, they're crazy. I remember overhearing conversations at the nurse's station about questions they planned to ask me and determine if I did, in fact, have multiple personality disorders. That experience highlighted my awareness and curiosity about dissociative disorders. Fast forward to my studies to become a therapist. I encountered a therapist who diagnosed me with dissociative disorder. She began using internal family systems therapy with me, despite lacking formal training in it.
Oh boy.
No.
This led to some missteps since the therapy wasn't conducted correctly. Concurrently, she was employing the 3 phases of trauma treatment, which included skills like creating safe places, using containers for overwhelming emotion, all the techniques. And I had also learned those during previous hospitalizations for anorexia. So I had that knowledge. It became increasingly clear that I had distinct parts that were separate from each other. As a client, this realization was challenging, however illuminating. Eventually, I attended a treatment center specializing in IFS, where I worked with an IFS trained therapist who also had experience as a shaman. This combination,
interesting.
yeah, I mean, she was amazing. She understood different worlds, very open, very curious, compassionate. And through the experience of her and the shamanism that added to my healing process, through my personal experiences and professional training, I realized profoundly the potential of IFS for individuals with dissociative disorders. Then I went to become trained in it and combine my extensive knowledge and skills in trauma-informed care. My lived experience, coupled with formal training, has enabled me to effectively work with clients who have dissociative parts, integrating a trauma-focused approach with the principles of IFS.
Wonderful.
Yeah, that's a great story. Wow. Would you please explain for our lovely fine friends out here, especially for those that may not know anything about IFS, what exactly is it in sort of general terms?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Loaded
I'll
question.
try. Okay. Yeah, and pause me if you need me to. Okay. Internal Family Systems, IFS, is a transformative psychotherapy approach developed by Dr. Richard Swartz. Amazing man, in my opinion. I've met him and he's been quite very compassionate towards me. Cool. It views the mind as naturally consisting of multiple parts, each with its own distinct perspectives and roles. Roles, the primary thing we see is roles, right? These parts are often metaphorically referred to as internal family because they interact with each other similar to how family members might. There are three main types of parts in IFS. I'm sure you've heard of exiles. These parts hold painful memories and emotions from past experiences, often getting buried deep within to protect the person from feeling overwhelming pain. They hold deep burdens. Managers. These protective parts try to control day-to-day life to keep the person safe and prevent the exile's pain from surfacing. They might manifest through behaviors like perfectionism, overworking, and some are inner critics. Those are some examples. Firefighters. These reactive parts, opposed to not being proactive parts, respond impulsively when an exile's pain breaks through. This is usually when a manager is unable to prevent exiles from breaking through. So these firefighters amazingly use strategy to numb or distract from the distress, such as substance abuse or self-harm. One of the goals of IFS therapy is to help individuals develop a trusting relationship between their self and their parts, and then unburden the parts to provide peace and harmony within the system. IFS suggests that everyone has a core self, which is a source of qualities of the 8 C's: curiosity, calmness, clarity, compassion, confidence, creativity, courage, and connectedness. I'm going to pause there. Are there any questions with that?
Oh, I have quite a few thoughts already, right?
Me too.
It kind of really goes into the next question that Drew's going to be asking, but with the concept of everyone has a core self. Like I have talked about this before, is that we don't really identify as having any particular part as a host or a core self. There's a lot of division and autonomy and separateness that we do view within ourselves. So let's look at, because question number 3, this might kind of, lead into that explanation.
Well, and the interesting thing is that some people with dissociative identities do identify with having a core self, like I do. And I really identify with those IFS parts that you just described. I could think of parts in my system that would fall under those categories. But yes, so question number 3 is, what is the difference between IFS parts and dissociative parts?
Yes. So let me tell you first about this, something that all of us can understand and go with. And I like bringing this in because it's a rite of passage to really get into IFS. And so basically, self can lead the various parts into a harmonious system. This involves acknowledging and understanding each part's role and concerns, healing the wounding exiles, and fostering a collaborative internal environment where all parts work together under the guidance of self. And I know I'll get to what you just said, garden
So
system.
like internal communication, basically.
Yes, which I have so much to say about.
I love
that
it.
I think you guys are going to love in the process of how I work with people with dissociative parts with IFS and internal communication. So IFS is particularly effective for trauma and dissociative parts because it provides a structured yet very, very compassionate way to address and work with fragmented parts of the psyche, or distinct parts, in my thing. It empowers individuals to heal from within by embracing their multiplicity rather than viewing it as a pathology, which is another thing I love about IFS. They don't think any of it's a pathology. And I know that's we're trying to go away from the stigma, right? So this is a rite of passage. For a more relatable example, the animated movie Inside Out.
My favorite movie.
Yes. So does a fantastic job of illustrating how different parts of our mind can influence our feelings and behaviors. In the IFS community, it's often joked that you can't truly call yourself an IFS fan, whether you're a therapist or a client, unless you've watched Inside Out. It's almost like a rite of passage.
Absolutely.
Yes,
everyone watch it.
Yes. So right here, you skipped to which question again? I kind of got lost in my
Well,
running.
yeah, I feel like I feel like we are touching a little bit ahead in a question we were going to ask you, but essentially what we're looking at is the difference between IFS parts and dissociative parts. And this is a
Okay.
conversation that you and I have had previously where we
Yes.
talked about, where I was like, well, yeah, but like Leanna has her own exile firefighter manager parts and Keelara has her own exile firefighter manager parts. Like each of us have each of the IFS parts.
Right. Absolutely. 100%. And I love this question. Okay. So the distinction between these is crucial for understanding how these framework approach is in IFS and the concepts of parts of the mind. In IFS, as we know, parts are seen as maybe like a sub-personality that exists within everyone and performs specific roles to manage our internal world. Okay, we know what they are: managers, firefighters, exiles, and I can give you more examples of each if you'd like to know. In contrast, dissociative parts, as seen in DID, are often more complex and distinct, often resembling separate entities with their own likes, dislikes, and even their own internal systems, like garden system you were just talking about.
Right.
Each dissociative part can have multiple roles, unlike IFS parts only have specific roles, as mentioned already.
Yeah, I mean, we would think of Leanna as a manager part if we were just doing like surface level, looking at it, because she is the one that, is the get stuff done part, right? She gets out there and she makes things happen, but that doesn't mean that she doesn't have her own, moments where she is acting more in that protective manner, or other times where she's having her own little meltdown about whatever it is going on. And I think your keywords there are the complexity and the distinction that goes on, because, she views her life is different from, say, Keelara's life. Even though we're living the same life in the same body, there's different goals, there's different visions. She's like a whole other person. She's a whole other self.
Yes. I so respect that, because I can relate too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I hear you, and I really want to embrace that. And my hope is that other IFS therapists really get this, really, really get this. So thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's so much that I love about it, and I really can't wait for you to talk more about it, but I think it's just so important to recognize that we can't just put certain selves of someone with dissociative identities into a box.
Oh my gosh. Oh no. No. Exactly. And these parts are usually the result of severe trauma, right? Often occurring before the age of 7, during critical developmental stages when personality is still forming.
Right.
And for instance, a dissociative part might not only carry the trauma of exile, it can also carry the protective behaviors of a manager and react strongly to threats like a firefighter, right?
Exactly.
These parts are often so distinct that they might operate independently, unaware of other parts within the system. It's like being on separate islands in a vast ocean, each unaware of the existence of other islands.
Mm-hmm. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think I like? Go ahead.
I was going to say,
we're so excited.
It is. So when you think about, some of the pushback that we have heard about from other people in the DID community against IFS for some of the simplistic way of looking at things, like what really drew you to get trained in IFS? Like, how did you connect with it?
Well, I think how I connected with it is I always knew I had parts, so that drew me in at first. I could relate with a sense of a self in the aspect of my mind originally went to some kind of faith, some kind of spirituality, some kind of thing greater than maybe that I knew, if that was either out there as a higher power or in here as my intuition. and my all-knowing gut. And I like the way that, which we'll talk about in a little bit, they welcomed every one of me, not just the littles, not just the smart ass teenager parts.
Haha, yes, that
They
part.
also, right? They also welcomed the parts that used to be in general therapy, if you will, called dismissive, called rebellious, called she's hopeless, called we're going to basically leave her off to die from anorexia because she's never going to get better. There is no compassion. There is no welcoming of these situations that fully encompass my anorexic part.
Yeah. I think therapists need to listen up here that it's so important to let and have all parts be a part of therapy and the healing process, and to include everybody.
And not just, that message isn't just for therapists. There are people out there with dissociative identities who do that to themselves.
Right.
To
they
their
don't
own
embrace
parts,
all of themselves. Right.
Right. And so welcoming even the parts of yourself that you just can't stand. I know I've had parts I'm like, we're going to put that one we're going to lock that one up. Like, no,
Done
that doesn't
before.
really work, but I think that's an important message.
Yeah.
And maybe that's part of question number 5 too, that we have.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So question 5 is, how is IFS helpful for those people with dissociative parts?
Let's see. I wrote a couple notes down with that.
Perfect.
The initial training I received in IFS, specifically we're working with dissociative parts, was conducted by Dick Schwartz. And I like what he was saying. So he conveyed some essential strategies that are particularly effective for our population. One of the key approaches that he uses, and I think you both will really like this knowing you, is it's called direct access. Okay. So what that means is it's a technique that's vital in working with individuals who have DID, because it allows the therapist to communicate directly with the different parts or identities. Mm-hmm. There are 2 types of direct access. It's implicit and explicit. Okay. So implicit direct access is, I know I'm talking to a part and you don't. So let's say, you came in guidance system, and I was going to work with you and then work with one of your parts. And let's say you were like not in not aware of another part, was like in denial that you had these parts or didn't want to come out. So I would be working with one of your, do you call them parts or alters? And I apologize what you do.
Oh, we have used the term parts for a long time, but we've recently kind of really embraced the idea of using the term selves.
Selves. Okay. Mm-hmm. Let's say one of your selves. And I know that I'm talking to one of your selves, right? Mm-hmm. And you don't know that that's what I'm doing. So it's almost like traditional therapy of the therapist talking directly to a client, and they don't really mention the parts or anything like that because they don't want to, because it can be scary to some people.
To be called out, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, we've had that reaction so many times, and they're like, "Oh, hi, Victoria," and we're like "We are not." Oh, we are. You're right. We are. Okay, but yeah, there's that initial reaction of no.
Freeze.
How dare you say my name?
Right. Yeah. So that's a part that I really respect in the model, is I can approach it as that. So I'm talking to someone without naming them.
Yeah.
And then explicit direct access is more the approach that it's still direct. So that's you coming in and saying, okay, Victoria wants to do some work today or whatever. And I'll say, hey, Victoria wants to do, I'll speak directly to her. Where a lot of therapists will say, what? We will not speak directly
Yeah.
to.
I will only talk to the host.
Yeah. Could you tell so-and-so what are they saying? Like having them speak for, another part or whatnot.
So IFS does not do that. A good IFS therapist that knows that we are working with especially dissociative parts that really need that. And these parts are asking for it. And we respect, and IFS we're taught to respect what the parts need. Ultimate respect.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, if you won't talk to Jenny's like, you ain't talking to nobody if you ain't talking to me, and like, we'll shut everything down.
Yep,
and Jenny's one of our
Right.
littles, and a lot of people are very uncomfortable talking to the littles.
Oh, and I love littles.
Littles
Yeah,
are the best.
and I've met the littles. And of course, we're going to welcome them. We're going to say, I'd love to talk to Jenny. And that's the compassionate part of IFS, that you really want to go to each part and get permission.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's so important.
So, and I don't get that in other therapies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically what Richard Schwartz was saying is that he uses direct access with people with dissociative parts, and it helps to build the trust and fosters a sense of safety within the relationship. However, what happens is when they start realizing, or when a client starts realizing, and it could be even what you say, and I agree with that, my part, and my anorexic part has her own self, right? And then all of a sudden the therapist would say, okay, I'm not going to hold that self energy anymore and do the direct access. I'm going to have you work with and self inside with and other parts. And then it's like the therapist, and we know that the therapist kind of pulls away a little bit, turns the role, like, you can text me 1 time a week now instead of 5 times a week, right? You give a little bit more because you're trying to get more autonomy within the system, right?
Yeah, so you're really kind of leaning into like, how is IFS aiding internal communication between dissociative parts? So if you could expand a little bit on what you were just saying, like how does that help with the internal communication?
Yes, let me go in there, because that's what question was that? The number question?
6.
Number 6. Yeah.
Yeah, 6.
Oh yeah, going in orders, girls.
We're being
Okay.
good.
Okay, so basically with the direct access, as I explained, they do the direct access, and then what happens is we're going to go ahead and go into something which they call, in IFS, they term it insight. I used to call it, before I knew IFS, I call it indirect communication. So I made up my own term for it back before I knew IFS.
Okay.
So here, clients are encouraged to go inward and develop relationships between self and their parts. For DID, it's between, I'm going to use Anne, my anorexic part. So she has a self, and then she also has, she has IFS part. So she has a manager part within her. She has a, that is obsessive compulsive, has obsessive compulsive disorder. She has a very angry part when people hurt her family members, external family members. And she also has her own, if you will, DID part, which is a sabotage DID part within her DID self, if that makes sense. So Richard Schwartz also referred to these as, he discovered that people with dissociative disorders have, it's like a fractal. We're like a parts within the parts within the parts, like a fractal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's such a beautiful way he described it, I thought.
I love it. That's what I used at the Healing Together conference. I pulled up a prism, right? I'm like talking about the complexities and all the different sides of it.
Yes. Yeah. And that's what I've written about. Because my mom used to say when I was growing up, you're like a prism, Tiffany. You're like a prism.
Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful thing to be, you know?
I know, right? So basically what happens is with communication, with doing this, is the therapist has already been modeling access to the parts, right? By doing direct access. The client then, as Anne, has witnessed this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Anne realizes, oh, there's kind of self in me. I have a spirit in me. I don't know exactly what that is or how to get to it, but I am learning. So what that is basically finding that sweet spot of those 8 C's within Anne that I talked about, the curiosity, compassion, all that. There's also 5 P's, usually more with people that are therapists, they use them, but I tell my clients they have them too, and they're beautiful. And one that Anne loves when she was able to is playfulness. And I know I've seen both of those in you guys, the playfulness.
Absolutely.
There's some definite playfulness, yes.
Yes. So then it was like, oh, there's some playfulness inside itself. We like that. So it became this thing of, I started doing meditations around the C's and the P's and really tapping in there for Anne. And that's when she saw that she could start communicating in some of the ways that I've done it before. And, we learn, like, each have rooms. So let's say some of the littles are in their room. So they have a walkie-talkie. They love pink walkie-talkies. So they'll give Anne one and say, we want to communicate to you. This is the way we know how to communicate.
Nice.
So they get very creative. So one of the C's in IFS self is creativity. So my clients that I work with, I'm like, wherever and however your parts need and want to communicate within, that makes sense to you, not me.
Right.
Let's go for it.
It's different for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, let's go for it. So some of them, have, some of them have the, like in the room, like big houses have the intercoms in the rooms, like the olden days they did.
Right. Yeah.
They'll do that. Some will say, I want, like, one of my littles is Tiffy. And she a lot of times wants Anne, because Anne's the like main most one. They all listen to her. She's like the boss, really, to go speak for her. So Anne will listen to Tiffy, what she has to say. Tiffy will write it to her sometimes, and Anne will read it and then write it to me or talk to me, and then I'll talk to the therapist about it. The journaling, the mapping, the map parts. We have a whole community that they have different landscapes on each of their houses, and they go out and they can meet in a community room, and they like having meetings in the community room, kind of like Fraser's table, but different. It's more fun to them. Yeah. They don't like sitting in the conference room table. Boring.
Oh no, that is so boring. We have to agree with that. We've tried so many different places to meet internally to do this internal communication. We had a gazebo that kind of sort of worked. We had like a swing set next to the gazebo, and then like kind of what ended up morphing into is like this campfire in the middle of the woods. Like everybody came with s'mores. With s'mores, let's roast some s'mores. And then everybody was there suddenly. I was like, oh, good. Now we can talk.
Yes. Right. Yeah. And then, so even with that and that, it's like, I would have to, in a system like mine, it would be, because some of them like fire. So maybe the ones with the fire would go into the lake while they did s'mores.
Ultimate protection.
And we have a lake too, by the way.
Yeah, see? Yeah. I know. It's like so beautiful. All the elements. It's amazing. Yes. Yeah. So that's a big difference. Like people that have the IFS parts, I will invite them to do, a meeting room, because in the original things, it's like unblend and ask your part to go to a waiting room. Well, some of my clients, even with IFS parts, say, I don't want to go to a waiting room. That's like, no, I would rather go to one had like a whole theater. I want to go on stage and wait. So they get to be creative with their parts, which is great, which is fine. It's just, it is very different still from a complex, distinct, dissociative part.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
I love it. I think I think
Yes.
that really helps a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah. So we touched on number 7 a little bit.
Yeah, we did. So, it seems like IFS is all about the all parts are welcome principle. And we've talked quite a bit about that. Is there anything else that you want to add to that? How it applies to dissociative parts? I think we kind of explained that. But is
Yeah,
there
but
anything
I'd like
else?
to go back to
Yeah,
it a
sure.
little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can talk about that. And let me do this too, because this is a very important insight that Dick Schwartz did meet, that when I asked him about working with dissociative parts, that I would love to hear if you comments from the audience, if they can relate. What he recognized was, when he was doing this direct access before moving to, which was insight, right? That any invitation to any client's dissociative parts self, include the C's, it was very hard for them to do, and they would shut down. The reason being is, anytime that people that have been through trauma with perpetrators are afraid of anyone showing any parts of self. Okay, just bear with me. Perpetrators, if they see one of their people that they are perpetrating show any sign of confidence, they'll punish them. Shutting down self. If they see any parts of creativity, they get threatened by it. They shut it down and they get punished. Okay, this happened to me.
Yes.
So any kind of those C's that first started coming up in therapy, when we're invited out in a therapeutic room, would freak me out, because I had this sense of, I'm going to get punished if I show this.
Right.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
yes.
right,
That is definitely
right?
the thing that
That's what
comes up. Like,
happens.
I'm not allowed to XYZ.
Yes. Yes. So Dick Schwartz noticing this is why he spends so much time with direct access, until someone reaches that place that knows there's not going to be any punishment. This man, him or me, this woman, is so welcoming and so kind and so compassionate that it's all inviting. It's all welcomed here. I'm not going to get punished.
It's bringing up conversations that I've had with other people, and it's been brought up on other podcasts. I think on Adrian Fletcher's Braving the Way, she's had some people talking about the littles in play and how some of them don't play, and Jenny doesn't play. Like, it's just not allowed. Like, she thinks she's going to be in huge trouble, and like, this has been the biggest struggle, with allowing that freedom of expression to come through, because we're gonna be punished for those behaviors, right?
Yes.
But not right, because that's the trauma talking.
Yeah, well, so that's right before, in IFS language, that the parts are unburdened, because they're still living in the past. Even people with IFS parts has that one part stuck in the past that has to be perfect. So when that's a role, and in perfectionism, I'm going to take the word just out, because I have my IFS parts that don't like that word. It's so minimizing. So I apologize to my parts and any other one's parts out there. I don't minimize anything. So a person that has perfectionism as an IFS part will often, when they go back in time, they're stuck in the past, because their exile was taught not to play in a different way than the dissociative one. They weren't taught to play because they had to be perfect in their schoolwork. So once again, it's like a role, right?
Right.
So for them, they also, when that unburdening comes, sometimes the exile will learn to play if they want to.
Mm-hmm.
It's
I
still
love how you
different.
just said if they want to, you know, so like I think there's been this big push, well, we need to get the littles to play, right? But if they don't want to, they don't want to.
No, respecting the parts. That's another reason why I love it. You listen to the client. That's how Dick developed IFS, right? He was listening to his clients. What are these clients saying to me? What am I doing that causes backlash? What they come back and they cut themselves. Oh my gosh, what happened? We didn't get permission. I didn't ask the client permission. Oh my gosh, I am so sorry. Repair, a lot of repair from self to a client. I am so sorry. I didn't ask Jenny. I was pushing her to play. I am so sorry.
You know, the first person that we ever received a genuine apology with no defensiveness attached to it came from our therapist.
And I met her, and she seems so much like that self, and I just adore her.
She's amazing. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, we really touched on a lot of positive aspects here with IFS, right?
Yes,
you know, but we've also heard a lot of negative talk about IFS within our DID community. And so what do you think that pushback is about, and what would you want them to know about IFS?
Yes, I am getting to that question.
Number 8.
I jotted down some stuff because I truly hear what people are saying. There's several factors, including misunderstandings about the model, concerns about its application, and also personal experiences of individuals with DID. So here are some of the key points to consider, starting with terminology confusion. The language used in IFS, such as parts and self, might be confusing or seem reductive, aka reducing people with DID or dissociative parts to a simple form.
Right.
And it's not anything simple about DID.
Which is kind of why we switched to selves instead of parts. We used to use parts all the time, and then it was like, but it's not the same. The language is not the same.
Right. There might be this misconception that IFS oversimplifies or dismisses, as we said, the complexities of DID or OSDD, right?
Right.
Generalization. Some may feel that IFS therapists do not fully understand the unique challenges of dissociative parts DID and might apply the model too rigidly, not accounting for the nuances and complexities of dissociative experiences. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
Concerns about the application. The effectiveness of IFS depends significantly on the therapist's skills and understandings of both IFS and DID. Inexperienced or inadequately trained therapists might inadvertently cause harm by not appropriately addressing specific needs of the DID clients. Like not knowing the traumatization of self and how we might have a harder time understanding what self is, or thinking we even have a self, or knowing that we have selves amongst many parts and not just one self.
Right. You know, kind of answer that question, like, who is Garden System?
Right. Negative past therapy. Individuals with DID may have previous negative experience with therapy models and that didn't respect the distinct parts or misinterpreted their dissociative responses. And also, in this thing, it could have been another IFS therapist, like I even had, one that wasn't trained. That messed me up. A few in the treatment center I was in, I went to one facility. They did not have the compassion, as much compassion, and that's one of the big C's. My system needs so much compassion.
Right.
Not so much now because I can provide it to them most of the time. The therapist that was trained at IFS and with the shaman training, or she is a shaman actually, had so much compassion that my parts felt so safe.
I mean, I
So
think
if you
that's a
have an
key
IFS,
word.
yeah, if you have an IFS therapist that's rushing the model, not asking for permission, not listening to all parts, not staying in direct access long enough, not really having that compassion, then the model is going to turn people with DID off. Okay, getting to the specific quote that we all know about that I had found when I got Dr. Frank Anderson's book, Transcending Trauma, Healing Complex PTSD with Internal Family Systems. Okay, listen to him before, like the man, like what he had to say, and I got to that section referring to people with DID as quote unquote masters of deception.
Yeah.
I was so hurt because that is not what the IFS model portrays. And it hurt me so deeply, and I almost have tears because I have so much compassion for every single person, no matter what role or what role IFS part, DD part, and for someone that's a trainer would think that we were going to deceive. It just puts all the pathology on that I've had in other treatment centers. And that's not welcome in IFS.
Right.
And I apologize for every person that read that too, because that's not how I work IFS.
And I think that, deception is the word that is misconstrued there, because deception implies this intention to deceive. It implies, this negative, behavior that is, done out of spite or done, with ill intent, where what we have going on is, as Jamie Marich quoted, masters of adaptation. You want to tell Daisy that she needs to go away because you need an adult part. She's just going to sit up straight and put on the adult voice. Like, yeah, I'm going to pretend to be whoever you think you want to hear right now, but I'm not really going away. I'm still here, but that's what you required of me. And that's what I'm going to deliver. And that's a whole different experience than deception. So adaptation is really the correct word. We are masters of adaptation, doing what we need to do to survive and protect ourselves.
Of course. Yeah, of course. And trying so hard. And that's, once again, that compassion. Of course, you're going to do anything. Of course, I will work with anyone doing anything to survive. Because underneath all that, there's so much hurt, so much fear. So you really need to embrace and breathe into those adaptations and not pathologize it.
Exactly. And I think it's important to remember that the modality of IFS is different than, say, the person who's attempting to deliver it.
Yes. Enough said about that.
So it's not just about which modality your therapist uses, it's about the therapist you pick. And we all know, we learned this in grad school, that the main deciding factor on the success of someone's treatment is the therapeutic relationship. That trumps everything else.
100%.
Amen. And another thing I heard is that in the DID community, there's a concern that the needs and the complexities of their systems run the risk of being erased or even just like thrown out. And it's grounded in the belief that their unique experiences may not be fully acknowledged or respected. within certain therapy frameworks. Sorry, yeah, my mouth is getting so dry. Therapeutic frameworks such as IFS.
Mm.
So, and I tell all my clients, absolutely not. Very unique, very, all the stuff that you have is welcome, and I will be here. Yes.
Yeah. I think the major thing I'm hearing over and over again is the compassion in it all.
Right.
I think that's kind of the underlying thing that makes it work.
Absolutely.
It really does. It really does. So, so addressing the pushback, did you ask about that?
Yeah. So
Yes.
what I asked was, what would you want them to know about IFS? So the people that are like, oh no, like, what do we want to tell those people?
Okay. So basically, it's crucial to find a therapist that knows if they're in association, that goes to a therapist that is, and I believe IFS certified, that is willing to have some adaptations, such as the phase-free trauma, to know what that is, to know that other modes of internal communication, co-consciousness, can be allowed if that's what those parts need, to listen to the parts. And when they say stuff like, I don't feel safe grounding right now,
that's okay.
Do not make me ground. Let me sit up, because that did happen to me. Let me sit up with my legs on the couch. I do not want to put them down right now, because that doesn't feel safe, and I won't feel safe in here.
Yeah.
To listen to them, that the people are not being, what's the word? Not rebellious, but resistant.
Right.
I like what I learned in psychodrama, that resistance is another way of saying an incomplete warm up, not ready to warm up, doesn't feel safe enough.
That's
Right.
a good way of looking at it.
That's a big movement to go from my feet are on or propped up to putting my feet. That's a huge movement to make when you're dissociated.
Yeah.
You know,
Right?
it's one. Yeah, like it needs to be much, much smaller to start with. You know, I think of clients that I've asked to put their feet on the floor, but like their feet were already kind of on the floor, but it was more like just plant them firm. Like that's a smaller movement than being way up high.
Yeah. So get into a little bit of behaviorism in there of small steps.
Baby steps, you know.
Steps, and spatial therapy and the baby steps. Yeah. All the stuff, right? So that's why I like it. I like all this. And once again, highlighting the inclusive nature of IFS, where all parts are welcome and respected, like I said, can ensure in the DID community that their experiences will be validated and honored.
Yeah. And to make it okay for someone to say no, like, no, I'm not putting my feet on the floor right now. Like I remember having a panic attack, kind of like a panic attack, and I had my therapist on the phone, and she's like, put your hands on the steering wheel. And we're like, no, we're not doing that, you know, but like, it's not like, we're not chastised. She's just, okay, like, you know, where are your hands, you know, and like, okay, what can your hands feel like? And going back to the small thing, like, and it wasn't that we were bad or that we were resistant or that we didn't want her help. It was just recognizing where we were at and meeting us there.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and that's another thing with the IFS thing, is a curiosity. Okay. I'm curious what would feel better.
Right.
What would feel a little bit, so you can have a sense of a breath, of a little bit of a stable sense of a feel, of a touch of something. Do you need to hear my voice? Can I talk calmly? The mirror, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah.
Beautiful.
Love it.
All right. Next.
Okay. What do IFS specialists need to understand when choosing this modality for those with dissociative parts?
Okay. What they need to understand is comprehensive training and competence, have specialized training IFS specialists need to seek out additional training, specifically with working with dissociative disorders. And I'd be very happy to provide trainings on that, which I'm going to be doing.
Exciting.
That's so cool.
And foreshadowing, I will be writing a book.
Yay! How exciting. I love it.
Yeah,
That's
on
great.
this whole, on all the stuff we're speaking of.
Yeah. And when you say extra training, right? So like, I think there might be people who think that if they get IFS training, then they're trained to work with dissociative individuals.
Oh gosh, no.
Okay.
No, an IFS therapist. Okay. Okay. We might be divided in that because if, like a Bible thumper, or there's 12-step AA.
Mm-hmm.
In AA, there's called big book thumpers, and I get those people, and I'm no judgment. All I'm saying is that if you get a person that's an IFS thumper, if you will, that does not go out the line of anything else but IFS, then something's going to be missed.
So it's like the protocol needs some adaptations.
Yes, ma'am. So that's the first thing. I think that also learning specifically, as we know, there's not huge switches. And I heard you guys speaking yesterday, I listened to your last podcast yesterday with the ADHD and autism and DID, and those masking, knowing, being familiar with people that mask and are coming in, and with the small little shifting, like the eye movements, like the movements within the body, they're not going to be like that whole shift of like, although I have seen it in some clients,
right?
Just knowing that everyone's system is different once again.
Exactly.
Unique.
Yeah. And shifts between different selves may show up more or less subtle within the same system.
Yeah. Right. And I love that.
Like, it's obvious when Daisy is out. Everybody knows when Daisy is out, but people don't know when we switch between Leanna, Keelara, Sadie, or Victoria. Like, those are very much similar. This one probably, which you're probably,
I was going to say, does wifey know?
Wifey definitely knows.
Because I'm with this one 24/7.
Yes. Yeah. So to kind of, and also not calling them out on it, letting them feel safe enough to say, okay, this is what I noticed, and this is my share. That's another thing I tell my clients with any parts, either or. Your parts do not have to tell me anything until they're ready.
Right.
Till they're ready. One of the P's is patience. Self is patient. Self of myself, and that's my therapist self, if you will, my therapist part. Right. Self is patient. Yeah. So that's one thing I would say too. The validation and respect, once again, therapists need to approach each part with curiosity and compassion, aiming to understand each self or part's protective intentions, and within it, if they have an exile within their one dissociative part, because they might miss that.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. And to not be simplistic, like, don't say this is like, we're not going to fit this in these rigid categories of a firefighter, a manager, or an exile. We get that your language is so important, and we want to invite you to bring it in here.
Yeah. Letting the client use their own vocabulary for their experiences will get you that more nuanced view of what's really happening.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So you mentioned yoga in your biography. So how do you integrate IFS with mind-body techniques such as meditation and yoga?
Yes. So I have fun with this. It creates a powerful and like a synergetic effect that enhances the therapeutic process, both with meditation and yoga. It's an encourage a deep connection within oneself, promoting awareness, healing, and I say integration into parts. And what I mean by that is them getting to know and communicate with each other and be so conscious when I say that word.
To
And
be
this is how I do
together.
it. Yes, to be together.
Yeah,
all
like
together.
this idea of getting into myself, right? So when I feel centered and together, it's like I can see each and every one of us inside, and we're just all like together, and that's how it works for
Yes,
us.
yes. That's when I say integration. That's what I mean.
Right.
Yeah, you get me. Woo-hoo-hoo.
Absolutely. Yep. And it can get a little weird when we're all together in the same space, and because it's a little overwhelming, honestly, to have everybody present. Sometimes it's a little bit more than it's like overstimulation in a way. Like, oh,
Very
we're a little
much.
too much right now. Like, we need a little kind of chill down a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like once again, like having a group of like a big group of classroom of all different kids and ages and this and that and this, and being the person on the outside saying, we want to listen to you. We all want to listen to you. We just need you guys to take a breath so you all can be heard, right? We just have to do it one at a time. Let's see how we
Right.
can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then have the patience to have it happen.
It's a lot, and one of the complaints that I have gotten from clients is balking at this idea of coming together to do that internal meeting. Like, it takes too long. You do this every day. How many times a day? How do you have time to do anything else?
Practice. Yeah. Yeah. Practice, and then it gets easier, right? At least that's what I've seen in my
That's what I keep
practice and
telling
with
them.
myself. This
So I think I
didn't
just want
happen overnight, right?
Yes, that's it. Like just validate that it's hard at first. It is time consuming at first, but it doesn't take long for us to have a quick internal consensus or a quick, feedback from everybody. And we can have it kind of instantaneously when we're more connected to everybody. And then then it's not this whole long drawn out process where we're doing a roll call, and what do you
No.
think? And what do you
Oh,
think?
yeah.
And what do you
Okay.
think? And it's just like, you just suddenly kind of know what everybody thinks.
It's that knowing, that sense of knowing. Yes. I love that. The sense of knowing. Yes.
Yeah.
So one of the meditations I do that is very helpful is having the C's in the meditation, finding them where they're located. And this is the one that is a little more advanced, where it's located in the body within each part, if it's a dissociative part.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a more advanced when you're trying to have people come more into the body, right?
Gotcha. Yeah.
So it's more advanced.
Mm-hmm.
And guided meditations, it helps where clients find parts in their body too. So drawing like a big old outline of a body, have someone draw your outline on a big paper, like construction paper, and then you can write where some people, that's the only way they can know where their parts are.
That makes sense.
It's interesting how parts seem to belong to certain parts of the body.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and some people can't visualize them. I've worked with those people, which was a learning process of me to really listen to those clients. They experience the sensations.
Yes.
Right.
And that's usually how we're able to know who's fronting, because we can feel that energy in that particular part of the body. Like, we know Jenny's out because it's like all the energy is all in our eyes, and it's almost like we can feel her sitting there looking out.
Yes, I love that garden system. Oh, yes.
I love Jenny.
I'm beginning to love Jenny too.
Yeah.
Another meditation, can I say, is
Yes.
you might sometimes, if you have to edit this or put it in two parts, I don't care. Another value meditation technique is called the firefighter drill meditation. This is from Dick Schwartz. What I really like about this is it has you putting someone in a room by like an external person, or I've even done this with the client with some internal parts, which was different. Someone in a room with like glass, you can see them, and you look through the room and you can see them doing something that really gets to you, that's going to activate your system, your parts, whether it's an IFS part or a dissociative part, to get activated. And you're going to work with everything that comes out and see if you can learn about what's going on in your system with this activation. And kind of the goal is to get to know all the protectors that might come out, all the dissociative parts that might come out, and then work with them and build that way to connect within doing the internal communication, co-consciousness, and then go with the sense of whatever part needs to go, if you would say a self of a dissociative part or self of an IFS system, to go to the person doing that activation and speak with those 8Cs instead of from an activated part. So it's basically regulating your system by getting to know what's going on within it, by viewing this person doing that thing. It's amazing.
That's
amazing
cool
meditation. Yeah.
Wow.
So, and I could go on about all different meditations and yoga. Yoga is amazing. I invite parts to participate. Some people's parts might not want to go do it. Like my teenage parts will not want to do yoga. They hate it. So they'll go out and do something else, like probably go hang out at the mall or something, right? Go buy some clothes. And then I get some parts that I have dissociative parts that are all about recovery. And one's named Hope and one's named Spencer. And they love yoga. So they'll come and do goddess poses, warrior poses, the strength poses. Yeah. And they'll want to learn grounding poses because they want to bring that grounding when the other parts are ready into the system to show them. They want to show them how to do the grounding.
That's awesome.
In mountain pose and tree pose.
I've had such good experiences with yoga because, I don't know, as a person with dissociative identities, I live so much up in my head and not enough in my body. I don't feel connected to my body. So when I've done yoga in the past, it just kind of brings the thoughts and the body together and I feel in my body. And it's just amazing because I usually don't feel that connected to my body. And I didn't really realize that before doing yoga. So really.
Yeah. Isn't it scary? It's like the first time that I started feeling connection and I felt hunger pains. I was like, what is that?
What is that? That grumple. It's like a bear.
Yeah. Anne's like, no, what is that?
Exactly.
And the therapist is like, you're hungry.
Uncomfortable.
Yeah. No, I'm not hungry. I don't get hungry. The biggest thing is feeling that you're welcome in the therapeutic office.
Yeah.
In every single aspect of you, self of you, IFS part, dissociative part, and having that compassionate person to hold that space for you, allow you to have that direct access, direct communication, respecting each and every part and guiding you, because you, with the lived experience, know more than the therapist about your system.
Super
I love
important.
it. That's
love those
right.
words.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
And it can be fun to play.
Yeah, that's a good one.
For only parts that want to play. We don't require it.
Love it. Jenny's very happy now. Okay. I'll work on this kid. All right. So how can people connect with you or follow you, especially if they want to get this book you might write at some point in the future?
Or trainings or whatnot.
Yes.
Yeah. Tell us.
Okay. So my email is Tiffany, their original spelling, breakfast at Tiffany's, Tiffany. C is in cat, T is in Tiffany, Morgan, Morgan, at gmail.com. That's my email. And you can also follow me on Instagram, which I can't remember my Instagram handle.
Oh, look it up. It's okay.
Yeah, let me look it up really quickly.
Yeah, I think it has like IFS in it.
IFS, TIFF, something like that.
Yeah.
Who am I? And then
the ever-eluding question of who am I?
Who am I? Yeah, because I do have a couple. I have a couple of Instagram, but this is my one that I do most stuff on. Okay, so it's at ifs.therapy.tiff, TIFF.
Perfect.
Love
and
it.
my Facebook professional page got someone took it over, so I can't give out a new one until I make a new one because it's
so
not
sorry
mine
that happened
anymore.
to you.
You know, I have seen
ridiculous.
people copy and impersonate, and the social media people are doing nothing about it. And it's ridiculous. It's like, and the one guy was like, why do I pay for a verified check mark when they won't take down the people impersonating me? Like, yeah, why? Why are we paying for that?
Yeah. Okay. Like I have enough parts going on here. I don't need a impersonator of what part are they trying to impersonate anyway? Like it's very confusing.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure meeting with you all today and learning all about IFS.
Thank you. Thank you so much too. And if I forgot anything about IFS, which I probably have, I apologize to everyone around that, and would love to follow up with any questions or more information, especially when I get my book going.
Yes. And this is just an hour-long podcast today, a little over an hour now, actually. You know, not your intensive training with all aspects of it. So yeah, please.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Love you guys so much. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for hanging out with a trio of multiples today.
We are honored to have a Gold Plus sponsor for Season 2.
The Institute for Creative Mindfulness is one of the largest EMDR therapy training programs in North America, founded and directed by Dr. Jamie Plus-Marich, author of Dissociation Made Simple. Dr. Jamie is the only EMDR therapy trainer who is out as a plural, and since 2015, she's offered the full EMDR therapy basic training in a way that honors lived experience and destigmatizes dissociation in clinical work.
We have never felt more accepted and validated as a multiple than when we were able to show up authentically as Garden System for our basic EMDR training. Having lived experience is valued and respected in these training courses.
Go to www.instituteforcreativemindfulness.com for a full list of upcoming trainings, both online and in person, offered by Dr. Jamie and her selected network of EMDR trainers.
Are you interested in becoming a sponsor? Please send an email to admin@acoupleofmultiples.com to request more information.
From your hosts, Drew
and Garden System.
Thank you for listening to A Couple of Multiples, the reality of dissociative identity disorder. This podcast is intended for educational purposes and is not a replacement for therapy.
Listening to this podcast does not constitute a therapeutic relationship with the hosts or any guest speakers.
If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review. We would love to hear what you enjoyed the most.
You can visit our website at acoupleofmultiples.com for additional information, including how to join our new online paid community called Hearts Multiplied, to access additional resources, and to also subscribe to our mailing list to receive future updates.
Remember, you matter and are loved for being all of yous.